So a few more thoughts on the categories thing I want to say. Yeah, my progression of my thought came like this. So I'm starting very anti-category. I'm thinking people should not categorize things in these simple categories that they always use. You know, you see it in politics, people talking about some subject and they just do the most simplest categorizations. And they should think of things as unique. Everything is unique. And I still believe that, right? But I understand now where the categorization comes from because, you know, a categorization is a simplification so you can communicate. You know, you might just be in the same ballpark as someone. You need some pretty general categorizations to be big enough to contain both of you. And that's where, seeking out the lowest common denominator comes from, is people need categories that they have in common. And that's the thing. It's like if somebody, a bigot, let's say, when we're talking about categories we have in common with other people, people speak each other's languages. And if a bigot of some kind, they think blondes are stupid. If they make a comment with reference to that, without saying the blondes are stupid, just say something about, well, of course she couldn't figure that out. You're going to know right away this idea, even though let's say you disagree with it. Um, you're going to understand whether you say something or not. That's another area of philosophy. Um, but in terms of communication, you're going to know. And the fact that there's a category bonds and includes all this extra stuff that is simple-minded in the sense that it's an accuracy. It's not just simplification. That's brilliant when you have simplification that isn't inaccurate. It's that this is that other simple-minded where the mind doesn't work. It's not good at simplification. Okay. So, what's the solution for this? The only solution that I could figure out is to create new categories. Okay, so that's slow work. That's where I think you have to create terms, and terms are categories, and they become categories. Start as metaphors and become categories, or something like this. Um, that's the only thing you can do is give people new categories they could have in common. And people aren't that keen to get new categories, and that's fine with me. I think it's dangerous to take on new categories too quickly. I mean, if people were to be able to take on my categories quicker, like the feedback I get, very flattering, thank you, but anyway, um, that wouldn't it be good if more people were interested in this kind of stuff? Well, yes and no. I mean, I think a society can handle people being into a lot of people being into it for a while, but it's dangerous if people are taking on these ideas too much too fast. You know, they tend to get taken for the charlatans that move in. So it doesn't last too long before the charlatans, ape all the mannerisms that are allowed become known in some popular figure, and and you have the half charlatans that kind of are into the reality of it, but just also are good showmen and all of this stuff. So, and some things that's fine, but in terms of new categories and values, it really should go slow and steady. So, um, so it's not such a bad thing. I sometimes wish it would work faster, but it's not such a bad thing that it takes a while to teach people new categories, that they can have in common. Because the lowest common denominator can be a transcendental number. It doesn't have to be junk. It's just that the cheap way to get it is you make these huge factors, huge confusing numbers. So yeah, I mean, of course, people they have nothing else to use but these simple-minded things because we know them. We know them. You need something. This is a relativistic analysis on our situation. You need a frame of reference, right? So your frame of reference is all these things, bigotries, pet peeves, and biases, as well as, systems of ordering animals and nature and the forces and everything. All of these. Some of them you believe, some of them you don't, but you can think with reference to them. Those are categories you can share to some degree with other people, depending, to how much you really know it. And it's not just a word that has some category associated with it. Let's say the small set, the ones you really do understand and can have some connection with someone else that has a similar understanding. Those things that you have in common. You need to build new ones. And the relativistic skepticism, separate from, see, my relativistic skepticism is focuses mostly on this materialist part, and this part about how we don't have full knowledge of stuff. That's stuff that, those are ideas that any sane philosophy uh, can adapt to. Because even those that say, no, in principle, we can't, there is absolute knowledge, they have to admit they're human and they don't have it, which ends up being functionally equivalent. You have to behave just the same as you do within skeptical relativism. There, because it's skeptical relativism is just a basic humility about our limitation of our knowledge and an acknowledgement of the relative nature of that knowledge, and you, you have to acknowledge those two facts one way or another. Now, in skepticism, there's our own way of speaking about that language, and we call it knowledge, a well-demonstrated theory, and so forth. But really, that's the idea. That's it, to get some categories that we can share. You know, categories that we can share. That's what logic is not the end all be all, not by any means, because it does really good work. But if you put garbage principles in, it does really good work making just bizarre garbage outputs, and it's very dangerous in that respect, right? But it's categories we can share. That's the most important part. It's worth risking that. That's how it's dangerous like fire, because obviously we need it so that we can share, you know, categories that aren't so blurry, that we really, understand. If you understand logic, you've got a very accurate shared idea with everybody else that understands logic, at least the core parts that are widely understood. So anyway, all right. Good night. Of course, it's not night where you are. Actually, it's not night where I am either this morning. But I consider it night until I go to bed.